Explosive new details this morning on the now dropped lawsuit against music mogul Jay-Z. The woman who withdrew the suit accusing the Brooklyn native and Sean Diddy Combs of her when she was just 13.
The person you're looking at right now used to rob jewelry stores at gunpoint. And this guy was selling crack cocaine when he was only 12 years old. From gang shootouts to armed robberies, these actors escaped the streets and turned their darkest moments into blockbuster success stories. Today, we're revealing 17 black actors who were straight-up criminals before they became Hollywood legends. Let's start with one of the most dramatic transformations in Hollywood history. 1. Charles S. Dutton.
You spent 7 years in prison.
More than 7. So 7.5 the last time. 12 all total.
12 total.
7.5 the last time.
Charles S. Dutton is known for his powerful performances in shows like Rock and movies like Rudy. But before he ever set foot on a stage, Dutton was serving a hard time for taking someone's life. At just 17 years old, Dutton fatally injured a man in a street fight. This wasn't some accident or moment of bad judgment. This was manslaughter, and he was sentenced to 7 years in prison. But that wasn't the end of his troubles with the law. After his release, he was sent back to prison for 3 more years for weapon possession. And if that wasn't enough, he got even more time added to his sentence for assaulting a corrections officer. Most people would have given up at this point. Most people would have accepted that prison was going to be their life. But not Charles Dutton. While locked up, something incredible happened. He started a prison theater group and earned his associate's degree. These weren't just ways to pass time. They were the foundation of his entire future. That theater group became his salvation. Acting gave him a purpose, a way to express himself that didn't involve violence. When he finally got out of prison for good, he pursued acting with the same intensity that had once gotten him into trouble. He went on to earn Tony nominations for his Broadway work and Emmy nominations for television. Speaking of starting points, our next actor's criminal past happened when she was just a teenager, but it led to one of the most authentic casting decisions in TV history. 2. Felicia Snoop Pearson.
Plea today from Felicia Snoop Pearson. The 31-year-old actress, best known for her role on HBO's The Wire, pleaded guilty today to conspiracy to distribute heroin.
If you've ever watched The Wire, you know Snoop, the cold, calculating assassin who could take you out with a smile on her face. What made her performance so chilling wasn't just her acting ability. It was the fact that she was drawing from real-life experience. Felicia Pearson grew up in the heart of Baltimore's drug trade. This wasn't some suburban kid playing tough. She was living the life that The Wire depicted on screen. At just 14 years old, she was convicted of second-degree homicide. She spent 8 years in prison, which means she missed her entire teenage years behind bars. While other kids were going to prom and graduating high school, Snoop was learning how to survive in one of the toughest environments imaginable. After her release, something amazing happened. The creators of The Wire were looking for authentic talent to portray the harsh realities of Baltimore street life. When they met Snoop, they knew they had found something special. Her real-life experiences brought a level of authenticity to the show that no trained actor could have provided. But here's what's really remarkable. Snoop didn't just play a criminal on TV. She used her platform to speak out about the realities of street life and the importance of making better choices. She turned her painful past into a way to educate and warn others. And speaking of The Wire, Snoop wasn't the only cast member with a serious criminal background. Let's talk about a man who inspired one of the show's main characters. 3. Melvin Williams.
It offended black people. Some black people that were under that Willie Lynch syndrome. I don't know if you...
Most actors study criminals to play them on screen. Melvin Williams was the criminal that other people studied. Known throughout Baltimore as a major heroin trafficker, Williams wasn't just some small-time dealer. He was a legitimate drug kingpin who controlled significant portions of Baltimore's heroin trade. In 1985, his reign came to an end when he was sentenced to federal prison. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. A drug kingpin going to prison usually means coming out broken and forgotten. But Williams had different plans. While in prison, he underwent a complete transformation. He became a community activist, working to undo the damage that drugs had done to his community. When he was released, he didn't go back to the streets. He went to work helping others avoid the life he had led. Then came The Wire. The show's creators were so fascinated by Williams's story that they based the character of Avon Barksdale partially on him. But they didn't stop there. They actually cast Williams in the show, where he played a deacon. The irony was perfect. The real-life drug dealer was now playing a man of God, trying to save the community he had once helped destroy. From Baltimore to Los Angeles, our next actor survived something that often proves deadly for those who try to leave gang life: a near-fatal shooting. 4. Sean Fontano.
What? They calling about the censorship for the hood.
Man, we don't need no censors in the damn hood. That's just another way for them to keep us lost in the system.
Video games are now a bigger entertainment industry than movies, and one of the biggest games of all time is Grand Theft Auto V. The voice of Franklin Clinton, one of the main characters, belongs to Sean Fontano. But before he was voicing a fictional criminal, Fontano was living as a real one. Growing up in Los Angeles, Fontano joined a street gang and started selling drugs. This wasn't some glamorous lifestyle, it was dangerous, unpredictable, and violent. Gang life in L.A. during his time was like living in a war zone where you never knew if you'd make it home alive. That fear became reality when Fontano was shot in a near-fatal incident. As he lay there, possibly dying, something clicked. He realized that if he survived, he had to make a change. He had to get out of gang life before it cost him his life. Surviving that shooting became his wake-up call. He left the gang, stopped dealing drugs, and started looking for legitimate ways to make money. His path eventually led him to voice acting, where his authentic street knowledge helped him bring Franklin Clinton to life in a way that felt real to players. Sometimes the biggest transformations happen when people realize they don't want to follow their friends down a dark path. Our next actor made that realization just in time. 5. Ice-T.
The United States is based on guns. You know, like KRS says, you'll never have justice on stolen land. So it's not going to change.
It's hard to imagine Detective Odafin Tutuola from Law & Order, SVU, as a criminal. But that's exactly what Ice-T was before he became one of TV's most beloved cops. Born Tracy Merrow, Ice-T's early life was far from the comfortable world of television procedurals. As a teenager, he started small, selling cannabis and stealing car stereos to make money. But like many young criminals, he escalated. He began participating in armed jewelry store robberies. These weren't petty crimes anymore. These were serious felonies that could have resulted in decades in prison. What saved Ice-T from a life behind bars was watching what happened to his friends. They were caught and sent to prison for those same robberies. Seeing his crew get locked up was his wake-up call. He realized that if he kept going down this path, he was going to end up in a cell next to them. Instead of continuing with crime, Ice-T channeled his experiences into music. He became one of the pioneers of gangster rap, telling stories about street life that resonated because they were real. From there, he transitioned into acting, eventually becoming one of the longest-running cast members in Law & Order history. Sometimes humor can be the thing that saves someone's life. Our next comedian found that laughter was his ticket out of a very dangerous situation. 6. Tracy Morgan.
What was the wake-up call?
Losing my family. My wife wanted a divorce. I put the alcohol down and I just walked away from all of it.
Tracy Morgan's humor on 30 Rock and Saturday Night Live comes from a very dark place. Growing up in poverty in Brooklyn, Morgan wasn't trying to be funny. He was trying to survive. And survival meant doing whatever it took to make money, including selling crack cocaine. This wasn't some side hustle. Morgan was dealing drugs because his family needed money to survive. poverty doesn't give you many options, and for a young man in Brooklyn during the crack epidemic, dealing was often seen as the only way to make real money quickly. But Morgan had something that most drug dealers don't have. He was naturally funny. Even in the worst situations, he could make people laugh. That humor became his escape route from the streets. Instead of continuing to risk his life selling drugs, he started performing stand-up comedy. Comedy clubs might not seem like much of an improvement over street corners, but for Morgan, they represented hope. Every laugh he got was proof that he had another option, another way to make money that didn't involve breaking the law or risking his life. His journey from dealing crack to making millions of people laugh shows the power of finding and developing your natural talents, no matter how desperate your circumstances might be. Music and acting often go hand in hand, and our next entry is a legend who influenced generations of performers. But his path to stardom began with armed robbery. 7. James Brown.
Huh? Because I look good. What do you think that is? You look smell good. I feel good.
And you sing good.
And make love good.
James Brown is known as the Godfather of Soul, one of the most influential musicians and performers of all time. His energy, his moves, his voice, everything about him was larger than life. But before he was commanding stages, he was committing armed robbery. Brown dropped out of school early and turned to petty crime to survive. But petty crime escalated, as it often does. At just 16 years old, he was convicted of armed robbery and sentenced to 3 years in juvenile detention. 3 years might not sound like much, but when you're 16, 3 years feels like forever. For most kids, those would have been high school years, going to games, dating, preparing for adulthood. For Brown, they were spent behind bars. But those 3 years in detention became the foundation of his incredible work ethic. Prison taught him discipline, structure, and the value of time. When he got out, he approached music with the same intensity that had gotten him into trouble, but now it was focused in a positive direction. Brown's story shows that sometimes the lessons we learn in our darkest moments become the keys to our greatest successes. From the Godfather of Soul to a modern rap king, our next actor's nickname actually came from his drug-dealing days. 8. T.I.
I don't drink soda with my alcohol. I don't really like carbonation with my alcohol. I just need one big rock.
T.I., whose real name is Clifford Harris, is known for hits like Live Your Life and for his roles in movies like ATL and Ant-Man. But before he was entertaining millions, he was selling crack cocaine in Atlanta's Bankhead neighborhood. This wasn't some rich kid playing at being tough. I grew up in real poverty, and he sold drugs because his family needed the money. He was so successful at dealing that he earned the nickname Rubber Band Man because of all the rubber bands he used to hold his drug money together. Think about that image. A teenager with so much cash from selling drugs that he needed rubber bands to keep it organized. In many communities, that kind of success would have made him a role model. But I recognized that this success was temporary and dangerous. The streets might have made him money, but they also put him in constant danger. Drug dealing isn't a career with a retirement plan. It usually ends in prison or death. I was smart enough to see this and talented enough to do something about it. He channeled his street experiences into his music, creating authentic rap that resonated because it came from real experience. From there, he transitioned into acting, using his natural charisma and his understanding of street life to bring complex characters to the screen. Speaking of family influence, our next rapper-turned-actor had one of the most challenging family situations you could imagine. 9. Trick Daddy.
This your boy, T-Dub.
Trick Daddy, born Morris Young, didn't choose the criminal life. He was born into it. His father was a pimp, which meant that crime and illegal activity were normalized in his household from the very beginning. When your parent is breaking the law for a living, it becomes much easier to see criminal activity as normal. Following in the family business, Trick Daddy and his brother started dealing crack cocaine. But unlike some of the other stories we've discussed, Trick Daddy's criminal career was particularly violent and extensive. At just 15 years old, he was arrested for drug and firearm possession. That should have been his wake-up call, but it wasn't. On the very day he was released from that arrest, he was arrested again, this time for attempted homicide. He was eventually convicted and imprisoned at age 20. For most people, that would have been the end of their story. A young man from a criminal family with multiple arrests and a conviction for attempted homicide doesn't usually get happy endings. But music became Trick Daddy's salvation. While dealing with his legal troubles, he discovered that he had a talent for rap. His authentic street experiences gave his music a credibility that couldn't be faked. From music, he transitioned into acting, appearing in films and using his platform to speak about the realities of street life. Sometimes criminal careers start shockingly early. Our next rapper-turned-actor began selling drugs before he was even a teenager. 10. 50 Cent.
How many drugs have you taken?
Right, and I don't actually use drugs. It was
You've never taken drugs?
No, it was an easy option. It was either...
50 Cent, born Curtis Jackson, has one of the most extreme transformation stories on our list. His criminal career didn't start in his teens or even in his late childhood. It started when he was just 12 years old. At an age when most kids are worried about middle school homework, 50 Cent was selling crack cocaine. Let that sink in for a moment. 12 years old. Most of us can barely remember being 12, but 50 Cent was already deep in the drug trade at an age when most kids haven't even had their first kiss. His criminal career continued throughout his youth. He was arrested in high school for carrying a gun, which shows just how normalized violence and weapons were in his world. At 19, he was sentenced to 3 to 9 years for drug dealing. He ended up serving 6 months in a boot camp program, but the fact remains, he was facing almost a decade in prison before he was even 20 years old. What saved 50 Cent was his discovery of rap music. Like many of the others on our list, he found that his real-life experiences gave his music an authenticity that couldn't be manufactured. His debut album, Get Rich or Die Tryin', wasn't just a title. It was literally his life story. From music, he expanded into acting, appearing in movies and TV shows like Power, where his understanding of criminal life brought depth to his performances. But he didn't stop there. He became a successful businessman and entrepreneur. 50 Cent's transformation from a 12-year-old crack dealer to an entertainment mogul worth hundreds of millions of dollars is one of the most dramatic turnarounds imaginable. Gang affiliation was a reality for many of our actors, but our next entry shows how prison can sometimes be the place where people discover their true talents. 11. Snoop Dogg.
This Jody, the Jody that got my boo pregnant and can't take care of his responsibilities as a man?
Snoop Dogg is now known as one of the most laid-back, lovable figures in entertainment. He's everybody's favorite uncle, the cool guy who shows up on cooking shows and game shows. But before he became everyone's favorite stoner, Snoop was a member of one of the most dangerous gangs in America, the Rollin' 20 Crips. Gang membership isn't like joining a club. It's a lifestyle that involves violence, territory disputes, and constant danger. The Crips weren't just a social group, they were involved in serious criminal activity, including drug trafficking and violence. In 1990, Snoop's gang life caught up with him. He was convicted of cocaine possession and possession with intent to sell. This wasn't some minor drug charge. Possession with intent to sell means he wasn't just using drugs, he was dealing them, which carries much more serious penalties. But here's where Snoop's story gets interesting. While he was in prison, his fellow gang members encouraged him to rap. They recognized that he had a talent that could take him away from the dangerous life they were all living. Prison became the place where Snoop discovered his true calling. Instead of coming out harder and more committed to gang life, he came out focused on music. His authentic West Coast style and his real-life experiences gave his rap a credibility that helped launch him to stardom. From there, he transitioned into acting, appearing in movies like Training Day and Starsky and Hutch. His laid-back personality and natural charisma made him perfect for both comedy and drama. Snoop's transformation from gang member to beloved cultural icon shows how sometimes our peers can see potential in us that we don't see in ourselves. Homelessness and crime often go hand in hand, and our next actor experienced both at a very young age. 12. A.R.P. Rocky.
Nice little piece over there. I want you to go up to her and tell her that Don wants to talk to her.
That's it?
Yeah, you handle that?
A.R.P. Rocky, born Rakeem Mayers, represents one of the most dramatic transformations from street life to mainstream success. His story begins with homelessness. He grew up moving between homeless shelters in Harlem, one of the toughest neighborhoods in New York City. Homelessness as a child is traumatic enough, but it also creates desperation. When you don't know where your next meal is coming from or where you'll sleep at night, you're willing to do things that you might not otherwise consider. For Rocky, that meant selling crack cocaine by the time he was just 15 years old. At 15, most teenagers are thinking about learner's permits and school dances. Rocky was thinking about not getting caught by police or killed by rivals. The crack trade in Harlem was violent and unforgiving, especially for someone so young. In 2004, his dealing caught up with him. He was arrested for drug dealing and spent 2 weeks in Rikers Island, one of the most notorious jails in America. Rikers isn't a place where people go to get better. It's a place that often makes people harder and more committed to criminal life. But Rocky had something that saved him: artistic talent. His experiences on the street gave him stories to tell, and his natural charisma gave him the ability to tell them in a way that people wanted to hear. He channeled his street experiences into music, becoming one of the most successful rappers of his generation. From there, he transitioned into acting, appearing in films like Dope. But he didn't stop there. He became a fashion icon, showing that transformation doesn't have to be limited to just one area of your life. Rocky's journey from homeless crack dealer to international style icon shows that no matter how low you start, there's no limit to how high you can rise. Sometimes the most serious criminal charges can become the biggest wake-up calls. Our next actor faced a charge that could have ended his life as he knew it. 13. RZA.
You got the RZA right here from the almighty Wu-Tang Clan, and today we're going to be talking about
RZA, born Robert Diggs, is known as the mastermind behind the Wu-Tang Clan, one of the most influential hip-hop groups of all time. He's also a successful actor and director, known for films like The Man with the Iron Fists. But before he was creating groundbreaking music and movies, he was facing one of the most serious criminal charges possible: attempted homicide. In 1990, after moving to Ohio, RZA became involved in petty crime and drug dealing. But petty crime escalated, as it often does, and he found himself facing an attempted homicide charge. Think about what that means. At a young age, RZA was facing the possibility of spending decades in prison for trying to kill someone. If convicted, his life as he knew it would have been over. No music career, no movies, no success, just a long stretch in prison. But sometimes the universe has other plans. RZA was acquitted of the attempted homicide charge. He has said that this experience completely changed his life. Facing the possibility of losing everything made him realize that he needed to make serious changes. Instead of continuing down the path of crime, he threw himself into music with an intensity that matched his previous dedication to street life. He formed the Wu-Tang Clan and became one of the most innovative producers in hip-hop history. From music, he transitioned into acting and directing, using his creative vision to tell stories on screen. His transformation from someone facing attempted homicide charges to an internationally respected artist shows the power of second chances and the importance of learning from close calls. Our next actor's criminal behavior started very early, and it escalated in ways that showed just how desperate his situation had become. 14. DMX.
Wanting to hear banging songs, you know what I mean? And I know I put out at least half the banging rap joints that's out there, so, you know, if I stop, it's over with.
DMX, born Earl Simmons, had one of the most troubled childhoods on our list, and that's saying something. His criminal behavior started early and was often bizarre and desperate, showing just how chaotic his young life was. As a youth, DMX was robbing people at night, but his first arrest wasn't for robbery. It was for stealing a dog. In 1986, he was sent to jail for dog theft. Think about how desperate someone has to be to steal a dog. This wasn't about money or survival in the traditional sense. This was about companionship and the basic human need for connection. His time in juvenile prison didn't rehabilitate him. In fact, he escaped, which shows just how institutionalized he had already become at such a young age. Most people who escape from prison run as far as they can, but DMX eventually turned himself in. This pattern of self-destructive behavior, followed by self-correction, would define much of his life. In 1988, he was jailed again, this time for carjacking. Carjacking is a violent crime that puts innocent people in danger, and it shows how far DMX's criminal behavior had escalated from stealing dogs. But like many of the others on our list, DMX found salvation in music. His raw, emotional rap style came directly from his painful experiences. His authenticity couldn't be faked because it was born from real trauma and real struggle. He transitioned into acting, appearing in films like Belly and Romeo Must Die, where his intensity and authenticity translated perfectly to the screen. DMX's story is one of the most tragic on our list, but it's also one of redemption. Despite his troubled past and his ongoing struggles with addiction and legal issues throughout his career, he managed to create art that touched millions of people. Our next entry shows how even gang members can find legitimate ways to use their street knowledge. 15. Method Man.
Smell good as hell, dog. I'm Jamal.
Peace, Silas. So you trying to get something to bring them nerves down too, huh, bro?
Yeah.
Method Man, born Clifford Smith, rounds out our list with a story that shows how street smarts and artistic talent can combine to create legitimate success. Growing up in Staten Island, Method Man dropped out of school early, which immediately limited his legal options for making money. Like many young men in his situation, he turned to the drug trade. He has admitted that he bought and sold drugs as a teenager, participating in the same cycle of crime that trapped so many others in his community. But Method Man had something that many drug dealers don't have: artistic vision and natural charisma. As a member of the Wu-Tang Clan, he brought a unique personality and style that helped the group become legendary in hip-hop. What's interesting about Method Man's story is how he parlayed his street knowledge and natural acting ability into a successful acting career. He appeared in movies like How High and had a recurring role on The Wire, where his understanding of street life helped him portray authentic characters. Method Man's transformation from high school dropout and drug dealer to multi-platinum recording artist and accomplished actor shows how the same qualities that make someone successful in illegal activities, charisma, intelligence, and street smarts, can be redirected toward legitimate success. 16. Jay-Z.
The woman who accused Jay-Z of sexual assault has already dropped her lawsuit. But now, for the first time, you're going to hear the story behind the bombshell accusation.
When you think of Jay-Z today, you probably think of a billionaire businessman, one of the greatest rappers of all time, and Beyoncé's husband. But before he was building an empire, Sean Carter was building a reputation on the streets of Brooklyn as a drug dealer. Growing up in the Marcy projects, Jay-Z wasn't dealing drugs for fun or excitement. He was dealing them for survival. In one of the toughest neighborhoods in New York, selling drugs was often seen as the only way to make real money and escape poverty. Jay-Z has been open about this part of his life, talking about how he sold crack cocaine and lived the street life that he would later rap about. But Jay-Z's criminal past wasn't just about drugs. In 1999, when he was already becoming famous as a rapper, he got into serious legal trouble. During an altercation at a nightclub, he wounded a record executive in the stomach with a knife. This wasn't some minor scuffle. This was a violent assault that could have ended his career before it really began. He pled guilty to the assault charge and received 3 years of probation. Many people thought this would be the end of his story. Another talented young man destroyed by street violence. But Jay-Z used this moment as a wake-up call. Instead of letting his criminal past define him, he channeled his experiences into his music. Songs like 99 Problems and Hard Knock Life weren't just catchy beats. They were authentic stories from someone who had lived the life he was rapping about. Our final entry proves that even global superstars aren't immune to making serious mistakes, but talent and determination can overcome any obstacle. 17. Bruno Mars.
Just really young, and I feel like I didn't know. I didn't know that you can't, it's not like, you're not just gonna have hit songs fall in your lap.
Bruno Mars is now one of the biggest names in music, known for hits like Uptown Funk and Just the Way You Are. He's won multiple Grammys, sold millions of albums, and is considered one of the most talented performers of his generation. But in 2010, when his career was just taking off, he faced a criminal charge that could have ended everything before it really began. Mars was arrested in Las Vegas for cocaine possession. This wasn't some minor marijuana charge. Cocaine is a serious drug, and possession charges can destroy careers, especially for entertainers who depend on their public image. For someone just starting to make it in the music industry, a drug conviction could have been career suicide. What made this situation even more dangerous was the timing. Mars was right on the verge of breaking through to mainstream success. He had been writing songs for other artists and was just beginning to establish himself as a solo performer. One criminal conviction could have convinced record labels that he was too much of a risk to invest in. But Mars handled the situation smartly. Instead of fighting the charges or making excuses, he took responsibility for his actions. He reached a plea deal that included a deferred adjudication program, which meant that if he stayed out of trouble and completed certain requirements, the charges would be dismissed. Mars paid a $2,000 fine, completed 200 hours of community service, and went through drug counseling. More importantly, he used this wake-up call to focus completely on his music. He channeled all his energy into creating the songs that would make him famous. His criminal record was eventually sealed, which allowed him to move forward without the constant shadow of his past mistake. But Mars didn't just ignore what happened. He learned from it. He became more disciplined, more focused, and more committed to his craft. Which transformation story surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our content.